Dear friends, I want to introduce you to Kerry K today. Kerry is a being, I want to say, that was given to me as sort of a present on my last birthday in June, and also freed me from a burden, what I will explain later. Because she talks about things which I know for 30 years, but I could hardly talk about. Kerry, I know nobody who reports so authentically, clearly and unequivocally about the process of the shift and the timelines, so that I truly see this as something very special. And as I just said, I am very relieved that I now have someone who has almost identical information to mine. And for that alone, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Kerry, I am glad that you have some time for us today, and I would like to ask you the question right away. Who are you, Kerry?
It's a great question to start with. Thank you so much, Dieter. I really appreciate having connected with you and coming to know you. It's like something is being sparked inside my own soul in this ordained connection.
Wow. Kerry, I want to start also for our viewers in Germany with the story I just mentioned, why you freed me from a big burden. Is that okay for you?
Absolutely. Let me share with you the brief story of where I've come from and why I know what I know. Because when somebody's asking me, who are you? What they're really asking me is, how do you know what you know? So I'm going to share that with you. When I was born, I was very, very sick, and I was extremely sick up until about the age of 12. From the age of 12 into my adulthood, I was still ill, but less severely. When I was very small, I spent more time in hospital than I did at home. And what this translated to was having spent more time on the brink of death than in life. So I spent so much time beyond the veil. And it was living there, Dieter. It was living in that in-between space, between life and between death, that I began, and I didn't know it at the time, but that's where I began to receive this connection with my own soul. That was my very first foundational connection. If people say, who's your teacher? My soul. If people say, who is the source of your information? I will say, source is the source of my information. As I began to recover and I spent less time beyond the veil and more time here on planet Earth, I was then blessed with another interaction, which was to connect with galactic beings. They became my friends. Some people would call these extraterrestrials. I call them galactics. And these are beings who are fifth dimensional and beyond. And they taught me in a very special way. They taught me by being who they are in my presence. So they didn't give me a schooling, so to speak. They didn't give me lessons, so to speak. It was more of a social interaction, which allowed me to understand how higher dimensional beings behave in the world. It allowed me firsthand experience of understanding how they speak to each other, how they process very difficult emotions. And it was by being in their presence that I learned how to be a higher dimensional being. So those are the two most impactful things that happened in my life. And it's through those that I hold a very firm, grounded knowing that my path has always been not to listen to the information of others. I've never read books from other teachers. I know of many other teachers, but I do not immerse myself in their work. And the reason why is because it's been so important for me to keep my connection to my own soul open and to allow that to be my teacher, so that I'm not listening to all these other voices. Because do you know, Dieter, all these other voices, they can pose as Archangel Michael from the astral realm, Mother Mary from the astral realm, Jesus Christ, God himself. They can use any name they want to. There are many, many trickster beings hovering around the astral realm, and they may use any name. So it's imperative for myself and for each one of us to learn to first get grounded in our own connection to our own inner truth. And once that's in place, then and only then can we start interacting with other cosmic beings.
Yes.
But to interact with a cosmic being, whilst the human being hasn't yet learned to discern its own truth, that can be a very difficult process. And that can honestly, I'll just say it how it is, that can be a big mistake, because you're opening yourself up then to information that may or may not be true. You won't know the difference. Your mind will say, I want this to be true, but you won't know the difference. So I'm very blessed to have been so ill. And I know at the time in my life for me and my family, it didn't feel like a blessing, but I now understand that that was the only way that I could bring in that higher dimensional connection into my earth body, not into my mind, but into my body as an embodiment, and then integrate. It took me many years to integrate that which I had learned beyond the veil, because we do not integrate everything instantaneously. This is often a process that takes many years. So sometimes I'll do a process with people or a meditation with people, and they'll think, oh, this is great. But they don't necessarily understand that is going to reverberate inside of them for years and years to come. That's the process of enlightenment. It's not instant. It's almost, the word I want to use is unpacking. It's almost like unpacking the gift that you're given.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, Kerry. I'm surprised. And also, again, not really surprised, because I see so many similarities between what you just told me. There are many answers already to questions I wanted to ask you, but similarities, for example, I never dreamt of ever writing a book 20 years ago. It was just there, from one moment to the next. The book was already inside of me, and I was writing about the artificial matrix and how we get out of the matrix. Kerry, you also talk about timelines, for example, and a timeline split, that a lot of timelines are coming together. And many of my readers didn't even know about timelines until a year or two ago. I've known this for about 30 years, and that's why it's the explanation for what I said earlier, which I feel as a redemption. You explain it very precisely, because you have already experienced it, what it really means with the timelines, with the different worlds that are now coming together.
Timelines is such a fascinating thing. But in order to understand timelines, because timelines is a subject of multidimensional proportion, we've got to engage a part of ourselves that can go beyond the linear brain, that can go beyond the limitation of the sequential mind into our own multidimensional nature. So when I speak to you, I am speaking from that space of having connected with my own multidimensionality, that when I convey this information to you, you're going to find that it's going to sound more simple than perhaps you've understood it before. Timelines, this is where I want to start. So many people will say to me right now, they'll say to me, oh, Kerry, there's 1,000 different timelines on Earth right now. It's not true. It's not true. There's one. And then people say, oh, Kerry, you're mad. There can't be one, because look at all of what's going on. There's all of these diverse viewpoints and these diverse frequencies. Somebody can be entrenched in fear, and yet another person can be entrenched in love. Surely these are different timelines. We've got the Mandela effect happening, where people are experiencing these bleed throughs of different timelines. So how could you say there's one? We've spent the last many years converging into the place where we're at right now. We used to have multiple, first thousands, then hundreds, then tens, and now one timeline that contains, this is the secret, the one timeline that we're on contains so many different worlds. And it's designed to temporarily, that's the most important word I can give you, to temporarily hold all of these different worlds, it's almost like it's an incubation station. Mm-hmm. Because all of these different worlds are incubating right now in order to take the next step. Yeah. And the next step from here is ascension, which is that moment of the great solar flash, the moment when the sun communicates to our body that it's time. Mm-hmm. It's time now to bring this timeline into one cohesive, energetic expression, meaning we're moving into one timeline that's going to contain only one frequency, and that's going to be fifth dimensional. That's why people talk about ascending into 5D, because what we're doing is we're bringing all of these different worlds, these different frequencies together. And in so doing, we're giving them an opportunity to make a choice, which is to move into the higher timeline, which is what we are traversing right now. That is the timeline into ascension and into a continuation of life as a fifth dimensional being. There will, however, be many people on the planet who are not ready for that. There will be many people who say, for whatever reason, I'm not done playing. I'm not ready. I don't want to go. I'm still having fun learning. And we are all infinite beings. There's no rush. There's nobody sitting with a stopwatch telling us we've got to rush to catch a train. We've got literally all the time in the world because we're infinite. Yeah. So there will be those beings who say, I'm going to go through another ascension window, which is kind of like saying repeating a class because I didn't understand it properly the first time. So there are people who are going to undergo another ascension window. That's the secondary timeline. That's the split that at the ascension point will have many people leave their body. And by leave their body, I mean they will die. Yeah. And what is death? It's a rebirth. It's a new beginning. Their new beginning will be to populate a 4D planet in the same way that our new beginning will be to live as a fifth dimensional being. Ascension is a new beginning for everyone. It's just how that's going to look will be different. Yeah. That split off timeline, which is a 4D timeline, that's going to move to a planet that's already been selected, is already in agreement, has already been assigned to host 4D life. And to allow that 4D life to have another go at it, another shot at ascension. But this time, it's going to be a lot easier. Because remember, we were born to a third dimensional world, and not just any third dimensional world. We were born to the false matrix, which was the toughest of the toughest places to be born into. This was utter madness. What we did by coming into this false matrix, most cosmic beings would say, you guys are crazy, insane, you're mavericks, and we love you for it. You are the pioneers of consciousness. And what we're doing excites them so much. Because ultimately what we're doing here, with this timeline as it currently is, if you think about what I'm saying to you is the false matrix, therefore, exists within the ascension timeline. Mm-hmm. And everything within the ascension timeline is being purified into either a 5D stream of consciousness or a 4D stream of consciousness. So what does that actually say? It actually says we are in the process of entirely collapsing the false matrix. Mm-hmm. Entirely. Now, if I say to you, the 4D split is going to go into another false matrix, that would have been devastating. And many years ago, it looked that way. It looked as if the false matrix was going to perpetuate. But based on how far we've already come, it seems profoundly unlikely that the false matrix will even exist on any planet once we've undergone ascension. That's why we're seeing the desperation that we're seeing. That's why we're seeing so many people who are vested in the perpetuation of the false matrix, trying their best to keep it alive. It's almost like trying to resuscitate something that is in its death process. That's what the false matrix is right now. And it's why our current timeline looks as crazy as it does. And if I can give you a visual, I will say to you, the current timeline literally looks like it's going to explode. So if you and I could hover above the timeline and look at it as an energy, we would say to each other, oh my gosh, it's going to pop. Yeah. That thing can't contain what it's containing right now, which is true. It's not designed, no timeline is designed to do what the current one is doing. It is literally holding every single timeline that once was, and it's collapsing it's in the process of collapsing. This could still take many years or even many months, depending on when ascension is. It's only at the ascension point that the timeline purifies into 5D. Up until the ascension point, the timeline's going to contain all of these frequencies, from the false matrix and those who live in it to the organic matrix and those who live in it. So it's utterly unprecedented what we are currently walking through. And that's why we've got so many galactic beings and cosmic beings supporting us, walking beside us, cheering us on, but ultimately always giving the same message, which is, we're here to support you guys, meaning us. We're here to support you guys in supporting yourselves. Because that was the missing ingredient. And that's why ascension never happened before here in this false matrix, because there've been previous failed ascension attempts here. But the failing was that humanity wasn't ready. And if you were to say, why weren't they ready? What made them not ready? The answer would be because they kept waiting for someone else to do the work for them. They kept waiting for a savior. They kept waiting for somebody else to be responsible for them and their outcome. And what we're learning on planet Earth right now, we are learning it the hard way. But what we're learning is, oh, I am responsible for my world, my peace, my happiness, my integrity, my connection to divinity, everything. I am the caretaker of everything I experience. My entire energy field is under my domain. That's where humanity is in the process of shifting to. And once humanity has shifted into a full acceptance of personal responsibility, I say personal because we cannot be responsible for the others in the timeline that we are sharing. We can only be responsible for ourselves. Once humanity gets this, that's the signal. That's the ascension signal. That's the communication then that goes to the sun that says, okay, we're ready, let's go. And then we have the solar flash, and then we have our ascension process occur. Then we have that final moment with the timelines.
Kerry, what fascinates me most now is that I was just thinking, it was 1995 in Berlin. I had a kind of vision in a deep meditation where I saw almost exactly the things in a fraction of a second in all clarity, what you're just telling. All these things that I could not explain to anyone. And that's why you really free me from things, because you bring things to the point, update them and make them so understandable that I want to thank you again just for that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.